Welcome to the 35th episode of the Tertius Times podcast. Today is Friday, October 8th, 2021. I'm your host, Brian Wright, and today we will look at news reports about a letter writing campaign to persecuted Christians around the world and how Asian countries are failing in offering freedom of religious expression. For the interview segment, I continue my interview with Pastor Wally, who continues describing his experiences in Saudi Arabia and his life after expulsion from the country. If you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. As the website states, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations. In addition, an upcoming USCIRF conversation, new report on Uzbekistan's religious prisoners, will be held online next Wednesday, August 13th, 2021, at 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 11 to noon Pacific. Finally, a radio interview, Afghanistan, Jihad, and Christian Persecution with Raymond Ibrahim, is available through the link in the description. I encourage everyone to listen in. I will repeat these announcements at the end of the podcast. All of the links are in the description. Based on a journalist campaign in the late 1980s for the release of a Christian who led a Christian group at Moscow State University and was imprisoned for 5 years in the USSR because of that, without receiving any letters or visitors, became, quote, suicidal and asked to be executed, unquote, according to letter writing and prayer campaigns launched for persecuted believers. The late journalist Dan Wooding heard of the plight of Soviet prisoner Alexander Ogorodnikov, and he began a letter writing campaign that eventually drew in thousands of Americans, and along with the intervention of then UK Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, Alexander was finally released by then President Gorbachev of the Soviet Union. Ogorodnikov reportedly told Wooding, quote, "Don't know what it was like to discover that there were Christians who cared, who wanted me to live, and who loved me," unquote. Based on that story, the author of this article, Mark Ellis, was inspired by Dan's story to start, quote, a letter writing World Watch WW group to plead for 340 million Christians facing persecution, discrimination, and even death in the Middle East, Asia, Africa, and Central America because of their faith, unquote. He later added, quote, WW's ultimate goal is to see a letter writing group in every church to bolster religious freedom, unquote. Quote, more Christians are now dying for their faith than at any other period in church history combined, unquote, he concluded. And, quote, we need to copy Dan Wooding and take what action we can to counter this little known and shocking Holocaust. Pray for the persecuted around the world, that they may be protected and strengthened. Pray for those Christians who are suffering at the hands of others, that they too would be protected and strengthened, and their suffering would cease. Pray also that their times of trial prove to be fruitful in the ultimate plan of God. Pray for those who are doing the persecuting, that they would give up their hatred and find God's love, accepting every human being as having been made in God's image, and act accordingly. Pray for those of us who can offer what we can to help alleviate those suffering. Quote, although a majority of Asian countries have strong constitutional provisions and guarantees to secure their citizens' freedom of religion and belief, there are severe shortcomings in interpretation and implementation, or in upholding such principles in practice, unquote, observed two legal experts during the Asia Regional Consultation on Freedom of Religion, Rights of Religious Minorities, and Constitutional Guarantees in Asia, organized by the Christian Conference of Asia, CCA, according to Asia Falls Short on Religious Freedom, say Christian legal experts, October 8th, 2021, from UCA News. Speakers emphasized that the governments of many of these nations recognize their own laws and implement the freedom they supposedly guarantee, and churches and missionaries take more active roles in ensuring governments they are not a threat. One such speaker, Dr. Faustina Pereira, a lawyer at the Supreme Court of Bangladesh and human rights activist, quote, recommended actions such as appropriately situating religious freedom within the complex web of competing and complementing freedoms, identifying those freedoms that are most directly under threat, such as freedom of expression, thought, conscience, and exploring critical alliances across freedom movements, such as those combating the shrinking space for civil society, suppression of dissent, maldevelopment, etc., exercising introspection within our own communities, recognizing sub-minorities within minority communities, those voices that are being left out or left behind, and pairing national platforms and tools, affirmative action, quota representation, with global frameworks, unquote. Pray for those Asian countries that have fallen short of protecting the religious freedoms of their citizens. Pray for the leaders of those countries who have legal protections in place, but rarely put them to practice, that they begin enforcing those laws meant to secure freedom of conscience and freedom of practice of their citizens' faith. Pray that all people all around the world would be able to freely express, without fear or of retribution, their cherished beliefs. And now let's rejoin the interview with Pastor Wally. For the past 2 days, he was telling us of his life and how he found his way, led by God, to Saudi Arabia and his life as a missionary in the heart of the Middle East. Today, he discusses his life and ministry after expulsion from the kingdom. Was it that pressure, that external pressure,
Yes.
where the king decided to? Okay.
Brian, I believe it was because remember, this took place before, during, and right after the Persian Gulf War. So they were under pressure, and the strongest pressure, of course, for my release came from the USA. And there were other global leaders that brought about my release. So it became an international incident, but at the same time, it propelled my ministry. That persecution experience launched me to a global ministry where I began to travel to many nations, and people wanted nothing but to hear my persecution story.
Right.
And of course, in the process, being a minister myself, it's not the persecution story that I highlight, although it's the main part of the body of my preaching or speaking. But towards the end, I always draw people to Christ, where people need to be saved, the salvation message, in other words, gospel. So that's been my life ever since. And I kept traveling. In the USA, I've been to all the 50 states of America,
Oh,
and, yeah, back and forth, all over the USA, and the Lord has opened doors of many denominations, okay? Even the most conservative and the most liberal denominations, they've opened their doors to me. So
very good.
I became known and featured by Christianity Today magazine, including Charisma magazine, Reader's Digest, and so many more, and television programs, secular and religious.
Right.
So I've been featured in many books and devotionals as well. So that kept me going and kept me busy, but I'm never busy. I don't really consider it to be busy when it comes to the things of God. I'm just doing what the Lord wants me to do. Amen. Thank you, Brother Brian.
All right. So I just have a question now. You were married. You still are.
Yes, I am.
Did your wife go through any kind of persecution?
Well, she had a taste, but she was never taken in.
Okay, it was mostly focused on you.
Yeah, but she went through a lot of hardship because initially she went out looking for me. They could not find me, until
she didn't even know. They would not even inform her?
No, I was taken in her presence, in the presence of my wife and my daughter.
But
so
they
knew
know.
I was taken, but they didn't know where I was taken.
Okay.
So it took a few days looking for me, but with the help of government leaders, they were able to locate me. So she went through some portions, and the pain of trying to see me, in prison, she went through a lot. So she had a taste of persecution. I had a 2-year-old daughter at the time. My daughter, we have only one child. She was about 2 years old at the time.
Okay, so she has no recollection of it?
Oh, no, not really, Brian, because she grew up listening to her daddy because she traveled with me all over the world and
Right,
all over the States as a growing child, you know.
right.
So she understood a lot, you know. And she
Very
went
good. All right.
a few times she went to see me in prison. On her second birthday, as a matter of fact, it was the first time that she came to see me behind bars.
And how old was she when
She was
you
2 years
were
old.
expelled, though?
Oh, when I got expelled,
Right.
oh, she was just a little over 2 years old.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So that, okay.
she was young. She was
Okay.
just a toddler, you know, she was just a toddler.
Right, right.
But she remembers a lot.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, having listened to my testimony all her life.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Pastor Wally, so much for giving us a taste of what you went through and who you are, how God has touched you and guided you.
Yeah.
And we can
Well,
appreciate your story. And I must say, when I hear stories like yours, people going through persecution, my thought is always, how would I have handled that? And only God knows.
yes.
I'm thankful I've not had to encounter that, but I'm sure you would say that somehow the Holy Spirit just came upon you
Oh, yeah.
and gave you strength and
Yeah.
peace.
As a matter of fact, all the attribution goes to God.
Right,
From
right,
the very moment that I became, there's a lot in this testimony, Brian. Like when I became #1 most wanted, it was for over a year. They tried to hunt me down. God's
Oh.
protection was upon me and my family.
And were you aware that they were
Yeah.
after you? Okay.
Yeah, I was aware. I was aware because we have connections in the
Yes.
government.
Okay. Okay.
So I was very much aware.
Well, that's good. But there were people there who were standing up for you in a sense.
Yes, they were in the government of Arabia.
Right. Very good. Very good. That's a
Not
good
many
sign.
not many people back in the day were aware of that. Not even in the congregations that I pastored, they were not aware because it was utmost secrecy that we are careful not to identify any local who was having
Right.
faith because they
Right.
will be killed. You know, they'll be put to death.
Right.
Nobody was really aware of those
Yeah.
things.
That would have been considered apostasy, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you again.
My pleasure.
And we will leave the interview there and pick it up again on Monday. Pastor Wally will share his thoughts on Christian persecution in general. By way of reminder, the previous event, USCIRF hearing, Strategies for Religious Freedom in Fragile States, has been posted on YouTube. I encourage you to watch this event. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, if you are or will be in the Washington, D.C. area on Wednesday, October 27th, you are invited to attend the China Forum 2021. Again, as the website states, the goal of the China Forum is to help Americans understand the nature of the People's Republic of China, the Chinese Communist Party, and key issues in U.S.-China relations. There is also USCIRF Conversation, new report on Uzbekistan's religious prisoners that will be held online next Wednesday, October 13th, 2021 at 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern, that's 11 to noon Pacific. Finally, again, be sure to listen to Radio Interview, Afghanistan, Jihad, Christian Persecution with Raymond Ibrahim. All the links are in the description. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you found the information and interview presented here useful and that it encouraged you to pray for these people in areas of concern and perhaps even inspires you to take positive steps of involvement to alleviate the suffering of so many around the globe. Continue to pray for those mentioned today as you are led. Finally, pray with me that God's peace eternally beyond our comprehension guard the lives of all those who follow Christ and flow outward to bring that peace to all the world.